to graph exponential decay, we're going to do that the same as we did with exponential growth. Not worried about too many of the details or the shifting left and right, up and down. We'll just plug in some values, plot those points, and then draw the shape of our exponential decay through there. Again, the main thing I want you to be able to do is distinguish between graphs and equations of exponential growth and exponential decay. So the first example we'll look at here is going to be y equals 1/2 to the x. This is essentially the opposite of doing y equals 2 to the x. It's going to look very similar, but just kind of flipped over. So if we plug in 0, 1/2 to the 0 is 1. Plug in a 1 for x, and we have 1/2 to the first. That's 1/2. Plug in a 2, and we have 1/2 squared, which is 1/4. Plug in a -1, so then we have 1/2 to the -1, which just flips that 1/2 over. That's going to make this a 2. And 1/2 to the -2, flip it over, so 2 to the 2nd, and that's going to be 4. So if you compare that to the graph, or to the chart, or table, I guess, of y equals 2 to the x, it should just look the same values, but the opposite order. So we have 0, 1, -1, 2, -2, 4. -3 would put us at 8. We could plot that if we want. 1, 1/2, and then 2, 1/4. And again, same thing we had talked about with the growth. As we plug in larger and larger values going out to the right, that number is just going to get smaller and smaller, but it's never going to get less than 0. We're just going to have very small fractions, so it's going to get closer and closer to 0, but never actually go negative. So in this next example, let's look at y equals 1/3 to the x plus 1 plus 2. So again, just throwing in a couple more things for us to think about as we calculate it. I chose a little bit different values for x. Instead of going -2 to 2, I shifted left 1 to go from -3 to 1, since we have an x plus 1 in the exponent. Okay. So I'm going to start with plugging in -1. So if we plug in -1, -1 plus 1 is 0. 1/3 to the 0 is 1 plus 2, so that puts us at 3. Let's go ahead with the -2. Plug in -2. -2 plus 1 is -1. 1/3 to the -1 is going to be 3. Plus 2 is 5. Let's go with the -3. Excuse me. -3. So -3 plus 1 is a -2. 1/3 to the -2 is going to be 3 squared, so that's 9. Plus the 2 is 11. Plug in 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1/3 to the first is 1/3 plus 2. 2 and 1/3. And lastly, plugging in 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 1/3 squared is going to be 1/9 plus 2, so we have 2 and 1/9. So 2 is kind of going to be that horizontal asymptote, that line that we get close to but never actually cross. So -3, 11, -2, 5, -1, 3, 0, a little bit more than 2, and 1, really just a little bit more than 2. And so decreasing, hits those points, goes out to the right, but will never actually get less than 2. Okay, so there's exponential decay.